start with my mask on here for a few minutes, and I may take it off because it's easier to talk. I will talk about, it's easy when you're standing in front of a group of people to talk about yourself. It's a great way to break the ice. So I will talk about myself. Why not? It's a topic I know a little bit about. So I'm originally from Colorado. I grew up in the mountains of Colorado, a small little town called Granby. It's about 8,000 feet, and I ended up joining the Navy. I started my paperwork in 1996, so that would take me 25 years this year. I went to Colorado State University for undergrad. I was coming out of there, I joined the Navy. And I started out in the surface nuclear side, which is aircraft carriers, and I went to buy all my nuclear training pipeline. I ended up going, my first aircraft carrier was Nimitz. At that time was over at RCUH in Newport News. After Nimitz, I came out to here, this area, for my second tour. I was on in Everett, Washington. USS Ingraham was my second ship in this area. Then I switched at that point to the engineering duty officer community, is what I am today. We focus on building, modernizing, funding, anything to do with ship systems. That's what we do for the Navy. So we have people that work in SPAY-WAR on the more the weapons side. We have people that work on the RMCs, which is the regional maintenance centers. And then there's a group like I am in that I work in the shipyard. So that's how I switched that community. When I switched, I got to go to MIT for my master's degree. I spent 3 years in Boston getting my master's from MIT. I came here to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard for my first tour in the shipyard. That was 2006 to 2008. After that, I went to USS Enterprise, back to the carrier world, back out to sea. After Enterprise, I went to Japan for 3 years. I spent 3 years in Yokosuka in Japan. I was there for the big earthquake, which I can talk about that. Stories for another day. And after Japan, I came back to the United States, went to San Diego, to the Type Commander job down in North Island. And after that, I got to be chief engineer on USS George Washington, which is CVN 73. She'd just come out of Japan, was transferred to the other coast, so I went and took her around, did operations on the other coast. And then after George Washington, I went to Norfolk Naval Shipyard, spent 3 years in Norfolk Naval Shipyard as a department head, and then was selected to come out here to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, and I left. So I'm very excited to be here. That's me in a nutshell. I do have a wife and 2 kids. Amy and I have been married 22.5 years. My children are 9, my daughter's 9, and my son is just turned 12 here a few weeks ago. So, and we live actually on the base. There's a house on the base there right behind the shipyard where I live, and my 2 kids go to the West Hill STEM Academy over here. So that's where they're at. So let me talk about the shipyard, and I'll please, if you have questions, feel free to jump out and say something, or I'll do it at the end too. I love this photo. We show this photo a lot to people that come and visit the shipyard, just to show that how we are all part of the city. We're not really separate, or not anywhere else, and we're not anywhere we can expand, right? We have the real estate that's there in the shipyard. We're not going to be able to get any bigger, the fence line is right up against the neighborhood. So it's a very good picture. So who we are, I think many of you know a lot about the shipyard. Been around here for a long time, but we're 130 years old. About 15,000 people total work for the shipyard. That's 14,000 civilian employees and about 1,000 military. Most of the military I have that work for me are up in the Bangor area. They work at either the nuclear side or up at TRF, for some sailors there. And then I have sailors that work over at the deck in Everett, Washington. I don't have a lot of sailors actually that work here in the shipyard. I mean, I have some, but not a tremendous number. Most of the officers that work for me actually work here in the shipyard. They're very similar career path I have. So speaking of the debt in Everett, very focused on surface ships. We're doing a lot of work with bigger shipyards, and we have right now an LCS, 2 cruisers over in Seattle, and we're also working in Portland, Oregon on a destroyer down there, and then the ones that are home ported in Everett as well, taking care of those. So that's that detachment. I have a detachment in San Diego, a small detachment there that's permanent, and then for the aircraft carriers do maintenance San Diego, we send several hundred people down, usually around the 700 folks, get sent temporary duty down to San Diego to work on the aircraft carrier when we have the availability, and then they come back home when it's complete. The other detachment I have is in the Yokosuka, Japan, another small jet. And again, we serve people to there to go work on the aircraft carrier and then bring them home afterwards. And again, about 600-700 people are sent to Yokosuka. We do send people in and out of Guam just to support the submarines that pass through there and are spent time there. And we also, as I mentioned, up in Bangor, we have quite a few folks up there. So, but every day here in the shipyard itself, here in Bremerton, there's about 12,000 people that are going to be, associated with the shipyard here. Now, not all of them are on day shift, right? And we have contractors and everybody else goes through here. So you're really talking about 8,000 people that, about 8,000 people every day that come into the shipyard, 8,000 to 9,000 people. So very busy. See what else we have. The only shipyard on the West Coast with an dry dock large enough and certified for a nuclear aircraft carrier. There are docks that are big enough elsewhere on the West Coast, but they're not certified to support the nuclear aircraft carrier. So we have Dry Dock 6 out here, very important dry dock, very valuable asset in the entire Pacific region. That's the only dry dock that can do it. And let's see. We do the reactor compartment recycle and disposal. That is one of our bread and butter. We're the only shipyard that does that. We cut up the submarines, and in the middle is the reactor compartment. That gets bundled up essentially, and those are sent down to Hanford. In fact, we have 2 of them that will be going on later this fall. All right. So challenges. I like to talk to the new employees when they come into the shipyard, and I talk to a lot of groups about the fleet. What's the demand signal on the fleet? If you go back to the Reagan buildup, the Reagan era buildup, the Navy was pushing to get to 600 ships, right? And this is before this time frame. It was like in the 90 time frame, 89, 90. We're trying to work up to the 600. We never quite got to the 600 ship Navy, but we were very close. Well, if you look at this, any one time, there were roughly, that's just a little bit over, but roughly 100 ships deployed over the horizon at any one time of those 600 ships. So the other 500 then were in maintenance, in workup, training, that kind of a situation, right? So fast forward now, the fleet size is right under 300, and if you look at it, it's a pretty flat line here. We still have roughly 100 ships deployed at any one time, maybe a little under, maybe a little over, depending on what's going on in the world. But what does that translate to? Well, that translates to we have to get the maintenance done on the vessels on time, get them back out of the fleet. They're doing long deployments. The demand signal is very strong for the vessels we have. So it's uber important for us to go do what we need to do and to execute our mission and get them back out over the horizon. You can see, reduced service life. And oh, by the way, our fleet's getting older too, right? We have submarines that are in the 40-year range. We have aircraft carriers that are up in the mid-40s. They're going for their 50-year life. The big submarines are going to be about a 43-year life. We're extending them a couple of them to 43 years of life, which is not what they were originally designed for. Most of them are designed for like the 30 years. So, and we're getting new class. The Virginia-class submarine is out there. We are not working on any of the Virginia-class here yet. We have none in the region, but they're in the Pacific and they're in the Atlantic. Ultimately, we will be working on Virginia-class before the end of this decade. And also, as the new Columbia-class submarine comes online by the end of this decade, we ultimately will be working on the Columbia-class because they will be replacing, that class replaces the class of submarines that are here in Bangor. So we will see those ships as well. And also speaking of new class, some of you may have seen on the news, you saw about the Ford getting the shock trials. There were pictures on some of the news. They did the shock trials before. The first time we shock trialed the ship since the 80s. And the Ford class will also be up here. We'll eventually see a new Ford class carrier probably within the next 5 or 6 years. I don't know the exact timeline, but it will be up here too. We'll work on it. All right. The Navy in the Northwest, a lot of numbers up here, but if you really look at this, this was put together by the region. This is not just Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, but of all the Navy here, all the sailors, all the families, all the support, what provided here, this 78,000 jobs, 10.7 billion economic wise, 3 billion just in the payroll to the Navy, and taxes in the 300 million. Really, to summarize it, we are a big part of the community, and we are here. We're all together in this, right? And very much the community's support and surround the Navy, and we're very thankful for that. And we couldn't survive, couldn't exist without the community around us. So, thank you very much. More on what we do. So, Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, it's a $2 billion plus organization. We execute with our 14,000 civilians and the military about 2 million man days worth of effort every year. So that's a lot of efforts that we execute. And the contracting is about 400 million. So if you add those two up, you get about that $2.4 billion organization. So pretty large, I would say. On the submarine side, submarine and aircraft carriers, we're pretty well split in the amount of business we do on that and what work we do. We tend to do more than we do submarines here, right? They're very much the work is done here. We do a lot of the aircraft carrier work spread around. We do some in Japan every year. We do some in San Diego every year. And currently we have 2 aircraft carriers here right now. We'll have both of them in the shipyard September 10th when TR actually comes into the dock. And in activations I talked about, that is about a fifth of what we do. There's some that it only says 4%. 4% is really the people, the man days of our people execute with the regional maintenance center, the surface ship. But as you can see, it's a very large amount of money that we do with that contract. $400 million in contracting through the 4% of people that actually do that. And that's with bigger shipyards and other companies and organizations that support the surface ship maintenance and contracting side of the house. And then there's other work, there's other various things we do as a shipyard that support the Navy. How we're doing, I would say that this is a good slide that I can spend a lot of time on here. Delivering aircraft carriers, we're doing well on the aircraft carrier side. We fully admit that aircraft carriers, that program, what we do on them is pretty mature. We do very well at it. We've got a good streak, 11 aircraft carriers delivered on time. And we do on what's called the I level or intermediate maintenance, continuous maintenance. We do well on the submarines there. That's keeping them, those are the deployers. They come in, they get a few repairs, boom, they're back out the door. We do well at that. The shipyard, and it's not just Puget Sound, the shipyards, the 4 public shipyards, and even you can include the 2 private shipyards as well. So we got Pearl Harbor, Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, and Norfolk Naval are the 4 public. The 2 private that join us are EB and HII on the East Coast. We, as a whole, are not doing well in delivering submarines on time. We, over the last 20 years, have only delivered about a fifth of them absolutely on time. The rest of them have been late, and that could be a few days late to many months late. So we are working as a shipyard enterprise with Naval Sea Systems Command, who is my boss. We are working very hard to take a very systematic approach to how are we going to improve our performance. Not just a shipyard go do better, but hey Navy, how are we going to go do better? And that's supply, side of the house, that is modernization, that's the fleet operations. How do we all work together to do better? It's called Naval Sustainment Systems Shipyard. And that's a big effort. We really only about 7 months into it now, in earnest. We started some last year, but we spent a lot of time working on our improvement on submarines because we need to do better. The world demand signal for submarines is a lot stronger now than it has been in probably 25 years. The Cold War was a very blue water, deep ocean, submarine v submarine against Russia. That was what we were in the 80s. We came into the 90s. When that threat went away, we switched more to the littoral combat. We're going to be in the shallow water, up close to the coast. We built LCS, the littoral combat ship. With the current world situation with China and Russia again, is switching back to needing submarines. And anytime a submarine's late out of availability or stuck in traffic so it can't get into an availability, it's not the right thing for the Navy, not the right thing incumbent upon us to go get the submarines fixed, get them done on time, get them back out the door so they can go back over the horizon and execute the mission. So that's a really big focus for us, is improving our performance on the submarine side. Balanced command and increased capacity, what's left up here really is about, we as Puget spend a lot of time making sure that we understand the workforce we have available, the workload that's coming in, and making sure we keep those in balance. Because if we get them out of balance, as probably all of you know, in any business, right? If you have too much work and not enough people, it's not going to turn out well. So we spend a lot of time working on that. And what we've done is increase our capacity, and that's a lot of that's through hiring. Over the last 7 or 8 years, we've hired up and grown in size. And we're pretty much static now. I don't see us growing. Just to share that, we're up to the 14,100 people. We're probably going to be there for a while, plus or minus some. I mean, there's some variation, but no big massive growth. We, all the shipyards, spent about 7 years doing a very large growth, and then now we're, budget-wise, we're pretty well capped where we're at. We're going to stay in about the same size. But we do well working across the enterprise to share our work. Our bread and butter is obviously the reactor compartment disposal. That's a picture of one right there. Oh, I think I killed it. Look at that. Reactor compartment disposal. We do the inactivations of the old fast attack, the 688 class fast attack submarines. We inactivate them, so at the end of their life, when they're done, we need to inactivate them, which means we defuel them and take everything off so the crews can be released and the sailors go back to the fleet. That's what we do. That's one of our strengths. Obviously, carriers are our strength. And then we work on the ballistic, the SSBNs or SSGNs that are up here in Bangor. So as we work with the rest of the the rest of the NAVSEA enterprise, we work on sharing that load and trying to make sure that we keep what we're good at in our neighborhood and work with the other shipyards to balance that out. So thank you, everybody. Let me talk a little innovation. I've got some examples here. We spend a lot of time on innovation. We as a shipyard invest a lot of effort in innovation, support innovation. We have about 125 people that really work on innovation all the time. We spend, as any availability ramps up, we put groups of people that are thinking of innovative ways, trying new ways to do things, right? It's always that continuous process improvement, CPI. And we try to insert into innovation. We try to get ideas from our own folks and say, hey, what is stopping you, slowing you down today? Hey, you got an idea on how to do something better. And we try to go harvest that and improve the way we do things. We have lots of good examples of that. We also go out in industry and we do tech shows and trade shows, which obviously been challenging the last year and a half. But go to those, see what the rest of commercial industry is doing, and they have good ideas. And then we bring those into the shipyard and try to use those as well. And so some of the ideas, some of the things that are out there that have been recently added, that I'm going to read a few of these, but laser ablation, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but basically using lasers to remove paint off of metals and any foreign material off of it. It's pretty impressive. I got to use one time. Pretty amazing.
I'm the metal review guy.
Oh, well, there you go. So I'll let you talk about it, right? We're doing a lot with condenser cleaning. I think that's this photo right here. This is basically a condenser, right? So it's where water flows through the tubes, and you have either water or steam or something that flows across them this way that cools it, condenses the water down. Some of these condensers we have, and that's a fairly small one. On the aircraft carrier, these condensers are very, very large. And it used to be to either clean tubes and or even to remove and replace tubes was very labor intensive, very hard, heavy machinery. So we spent a lot of time on innovation on making it more automated. So this is more automated here. So people don't have to be lifting things. And then we've also gone out in commercial industry and picked up some pretty nifty tools that it would take a few minutes to, for instance, break the weld and pull a tube out. Can now be done in a matter of 25 to 30 seconds, which is with a very light machine, less than a 70-pound machine. So it's pretty impressive, what we can do with that innovation. Right here was an example of some 3D scanning. We do this. We have things called FarrowArm technology. It's just the name of the company, but we do some 3D scans. We also have these essentially like an arm that's X, Y, Z coordinate that you can scan. You touch an object and it creates a digital image, essentially, of what that surface looks like, and you can marry those two up. This is an example when they did it's an aircraft carrier, but scanned from the pier, so what it looks like with a 3D digital scan. This is some more digital scanning stuff. This was also digital scanning. It's done on the submarine structure. Some of these are here. And over here, this one over here on the left, this is one of the innovations for COVID that our own folks came up with. At the beginning, it was, and it's still actually being, doing some of the final testing, but it's high energy UV light. It's UVC or UVB, I can't remember, UVC I think is what it is. Very high energy UV lights that kill the virus. And our folks came up with a way to basically miniaturize that, put it into something that's handheld with a battery, and be able to use it. And they went to Colorado State University, of all things, with my alma mater, and have been doing some of the rigorous testing of that. And put the patent out as well. We are considered, we have lab status, which means things we do design and build, we can patent. We have several patents out there from the shipyard for the reason. So very strong on our additive manufacturing. That's I'd say the next wave of innovation in the Navy is going to be a lot of additive manufacturing. Building valves, building components, the structures that are typically been machined over the past with very 5-axis type machines. Additive manufacturing can print it in less time, less material because you're not cutting material off, right? You're only putting material in, and faster as well. So a lot of the additive manufacturing in the Navy is being tested right now for rigorous, how much shock can handle, those kind of things. And I think that one of the waves in the Navy that we're going to see in the next 5-10 years is a lot more additive manufacturing. And we at the shipyard are already doing a lot of it to test and experiment and build things we don't necessarily leave on the ships and send them to sea with, but our temporary systems or a tool or a fitting or a jig or something like that. We will go ahead and additive manufacture and print it ourselves so we can use it. All right, people. The most important investment we do is investing in our people. We have many teams that work on this, but connection to mission is really sharing with all of our workforce the importance of what they do, and making sure they understand that even though they come to work and they may put a bolt on something or grind something or remove paint, or maybe they just paint something, blast something. It may not seem like it's that important, but every little bit of effort, every man day, every hour, every minute they put into that, ultimately leads to something very important. That's that ship going out on mission, or the submarine going out. So we spend some time, sharing the why behind everybody's efforts and working with it. System of development. This is making sure that anybody that comes in the shipyard, has a career development plan, right? It's not just, hey, come to work. It's, hey, how do we make you a better person, make you a better leader, make you a better mechanic, make you a better whatever the case may be. And they have career paths and they work on development throughout their career. Spend a lot of time there. Command Career Center is folks to advise. It's really setting up people to advise all our employees on how do they progress through their careers and move on. And then character development is that's self-explanatory, right? How do we develop folks to become right thinkers with the right attitudes, the right approach to things, and have the right character in our organization. Continuous training development is something we always do out there. You take a look at this. Apprentice program, learning centers, boot camps, CTD is what we call it, continuous training development. It's really about how do we train our people. We hire people in that, yesterday were working at maybe Starbucks or in the grocery store, excuse me, and now they're in the shipyard, and now we want them to, be a pipe fitter or a welder. So how do we do that? And we spend a lot of time, working with our folks to make them as productive as possible, as soon as possible, and build their skills. And this is some of the, just this picture. That's obviously an older picture of our folks, but this is line handling, pulling an aircraft carrier into the dock. Believe it or not, as you come in, right, and you can use winches to pull it in, but there's a lot of manpower to make sure it's centered in the dock. If you want to get it set down within like a half an inch of where it needs to be, and then just some other folks working out in the shops there. Our strategic framework, this is we as a command have been working on this for several years now, but it really is what is our guidance as a command? Where are we going to go as a command? It's more than just go do the work, deliver the vessels. Now what are we going to do as a command? So over here on the left, this is the nuclear program principles, all the naval nuclear power. These are kind of the principles here. I know they're kind of hard to read, but some of these, face facts brutally, attention to detail, responsibility is a unique concept, enforcement of standards. These are the kind of things on the nuclear side that we have. We have some command guiding principles. Win as a team, excellence in all we do, always get better. And so how do we take these as our principles that we live by, and what does that mean for us as a command and as 15,000 people? So we have this triangle here. And the way I explain this to new employees when they come in, I explain to a lot of other folks too, is I look at this as like looking down a road, right? You're looking down a road, at the end is where you want to be. At the end right here is where we want to be. We want to deliver warships on time, every time, fully capable, ready to go over the horizon. The results that we want to get right there is safety, quality, delivery, cost, and morale. So that's our end goal. That's what we want to get to. We talk about here, this is our foundation we're standing on, and I'll actually relate this to like a car if you're driving down the road, right? We have integrity, teamwork, ingenuity, excellence, and service, but I think of it, describe it like a car. You got to have wheels, you got to have a frame, you got to have a steering wheel. Okay, now we're going to go down the road, and on each side of the road are guardrails. Those are our principles. So as long as we stay within our principles, we stay on the road, and we're not out in the ditch, we're going the right direction. We're still headed toward our ultimate goal of delivering the warship. And here in the middle, we call them strategies, but this is our decision space. This is where we get to go influence. This is where we get to go change, set up programs. We have a people group. We call it executive steering committee, but a people group working on that development, that training. How do we get somebody from entry level to retirement? What does their career look like, right? We have an innovation group, pretty self-explanatory. How do we weave innovation into everything we do to make it better, make us more efficient, more effective? A safety group, absolutely most important, right? Everyone has to go home at the end of the day with better health than they started with, right? We want everybody to be safe. Infrastructure, let me talk about that just for a second. I'll sidebar here. Probably you may have heard of the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Plan. That is really, an infrastructure is not only just SIOP, it's also anything with buildings and facilities, which are absolutely necessary to do our work. But if you hear a SIOP, that is the recognition happened a couple of years ago, really, that all our public shipyards need investment in the infrastructure, right? We're 130 years old. We have buildings that are approaching the 100-year-old point. I came from Norfolk. That's a 250-year-old shipyard with buildings that are well over 100 years there. Other shipyards, same issues, right? Need to invest. And the way funding has worked over the years, I'll try to boil it down to essentially we had to compete with the rest of the Navy to get the funding to invest in the infrastructure. So where SIOP is different is, okay, setting funding aside only for the shipyards. And what it is about a 20-year plan to invest more infrastructure and equipment, buildings, dry dock, upgrades, all those kind of things to make sure that we are ready for the next 130 years of operations. So infrastructure group dealing with, again, preparing for SIOP. A lot of the preps are happening right now. And then we have a product delivery group, which is really focusing on how we go execute our mission. Go repair the submarines, go repair the aircraft carriers and get them done. So again, if we start out here in our car, this is where we get to decide how we drive, how we steer, how fast we go, how many people are with us, that kind of thing. And ultimately we get down to the road at the end here where we have, we've been safe, our car is still in good shape, we got there on time, we didn't spend too much money, and we have delivered our mission. So this is what we as a command drive toward, and some groups in the middle that really influence a lot of what happens.
You got this, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Community involvement. So one thing I like to talk about, and I think we have a lot of community involvement everywhere, right? All our people live in the community, lots of involvement. But this in particular is about STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. We have a very large outreach program for students, for young folks to really get them interested in science and technology and math and engineering. Hopefully someday they'll go back to the shipyard, but even if they don't, it's very important. Everything we do is founded in mathematics. Everything there's science involved in everything we have or own or want to be involved with. So even my own kids get involved in this. I got a video I can show if people want to see it. This summer camp that we did right here, my son did it, and my daughter did too. But the video was my son with a little hydraulic arm and crane system he made. But bottom line is our group works with the schools and community, and they're doing lots of outreach here. Thousands of students have been participated. It's been going on for many years now. Actually, Newick is very much involved with it as well, and we started doing these summer camps. And when we had to do this virtual pivot, that's because of COVID. And now here we are. We've done virtual summer camps and still doing virtual and trying to get. Hopefully, the COVID allows us to get into the schools again this year and do more outreach with the students in the area, so we can get more exposure to science and technology. A little bit about our diversity in the shipyard. Obviously, much diversity in thought, background. You talk about who makes up the shipyard. About 30% of our shipyard is veterans, and they come from all over the world, really. And the shipyard and the rest, mostly locals in this area. If you kind of look at where folks live, and we have about 70% of the shipyard lives within about, like the Bremerton and Port Orchard area. And then we have the rest of the shipyard lives as far away as Seattle, Big Harbor, Tacoma, all the way north to Squim. We have a lot of folks that commute pretty long distances. But what do I get with this? We all have different backgrounds, all have different upbringings and our thoughts and groups we associate with, and we celebrate that in the shipyard. We want to make sure that everybody's different, and we have more diversity in the shipyard of thought, of background, of race and ethnicity, you name it. We bring it all together and include all those groups and all those people into everything we do. And we have employee resource groups. That's what some of these are here. And Heroes, Hispanic, Cross-Relays for Disabilities, Asian American. It's one of the newest ones we have. Asian American, Pacific Islander. This is the Veterans, Women's Pride for LGBT, African American over here, and Alive, and mind and body, spirit type group. So, and we certainly celebrate. If anybody that has more interested in participating with these groups, they do also do community outreach and work with the community too. I think to just push the button. Should we just push the button? Right? Should be a video.
Yep. One thing.
I'll let you watch this and I'll talk to you. Go ahead. Maybe. Maybe we will watch my son.
Technology is great
Until it isn't, yeah. Computers are just so hard because IT changes so fast. It's crazy. We're doing upgrades in the Navy as well. We're doing upgrades in IT all the time.
Yeah.
The government is, I would say, slow when it comes to changing. I'll admit it. We're all, we're not the fastest at that. IT changes way too fast. And we're going through network upgrades all the time, and it's always a challenge. And how about we just, it's not going to work, I can tell.
It used to be that way in the space program.
Yeah.
But, well, yeah, because they had to use military grade 2 or 3 generations
you very much. And the video is talking, it's kind of what we did in COVID, then going into COVID, and I had the CEO of USS Nimitz. This is before his 11-month deployment. He was on the video, talking about just everything the shipyard does, how important the shipyard is, and how we, when we get into the COVID environment, we turn to shipyards, all of us, when COVID kicked up, so March of 2020, we did send a large percentage of the workforce home, because we didn't know, as all of us didn't know what was going to happen. By June, we had everybody back in the shipyard. I mean, there are some folks who still telework or high-risk folks that are out, but for the most part, all the shipyards, everybody back, and by June, we've been full force, full strength since then. We have worked quite a bit on how do we keep our workforce safe. We did screenings when they came in the yard every day. We have this protective triad, we call it, wearing a mask, stay 6 feet away, and good hygiene. That's our terminology we use, that hey, protective triad, use it, live it. Social distancing, just like many places, right? We keep people apart. We don't let as many people in the conference rooms. We did go virtual for quite a bit of what we do. Instead of having a meeting, we use Microsoft Teams is what we have. Use Teams, get on, and actually work together, which it's been good. We've figured out how we could do that. That was not something the shipyards were very good at. We've learned how to telework. For those that can do it, some folks work in a shipyard. If you're going to work on the component on the submarine, you can't go do that in the garage. But there are other trades in there, other skills in the shipyard that certainly can be done at home. So we still allow that to happen. Lots of cleaning. There might be there's pictures in the video, but we did a lot of cleaning, like turnstiles and common areas, masks. Of course, we all had to figure out how to do that. I'll get to the next slide. We made masks. We sewed masks, many thousands of masks. To support the workforce. Barriers, sneeze guards, set those, it's hard to see here, but that's what's here. And then the vaccine, we started getting the vaccine in February, and then we have about 50% of the shipyard is vaccinated at this point. We're working on, everybody's up to, at this point it's not mandatory for the federal workforce, so it's still a choice. And we'll see how this progresses. It hasn't really moved much in the last couple months, but that's where we're at, about 50%. So 50%, that's about 7,000 R's, right? Vaccine. And the next slide talks about some of the maybe next. And the next slide talks about some of the things we made, some of the things we, the effort, the work to go into it. Talk about the masks that are there. I was talking a little bit. Graphic signs, handouts. We posted things on the shipyard. 900, almost 1,000 gallons of hand sanitizer made ourselves in the shipyard. We have a lab, right? Come together, make the right chemicals good, and then start making it. 2,500 cleaning kits. Those were made and distributed. 12 hand washing stations. And here's the mask. We made about 120,000 masks, including 18,000 by about 150 folks that were at home. There it is. There we go. Office barriers, special masks for hard of hearing. We made basically clear masks so you can still see this movement. So all these, we supported the local community by some of those things that we put together and made. We sent outside the shipyard to support other areas outside the shipyard. And that was just Puget Sound. All the shipyards really turned to on this and did something very similar in all the shipyards.